In 1999, John, a young man with a dream of playing in the NFL, found himself working as a park ranger at Yosemite National Park. The job wasn't his first choice, but he was grateful for the steady income and the opportunity to be outdoors. He had grown to love the work, but nothing could have prepared him for the events of March 18, 1999. It started with a call about a potential forest fire. A hiker had spotted smoke rising through the trees near a place called Long Cabin. Forest fires were a serious concern in Yosemite, and so John was sent to investigate. As he drove to the location, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a small campfire. When he arrived, he saw black smoke rising through the trees. The smoke was unusual, as it indicated that something other than wood was burning. So as he hiked towards the source of the smoke, the smell of burning plastic grew stronger. When he finally reached the source, he found a burned out car, abandoned among the trees. It was clear that someone had set the car on fire, but there was something else in the air. John couldn't quite place it, but it smelled like burning meat. So John was confused and curious about what he had just found. So he decided to investigate. So as John circled the burned out vehicle, he couldn't help but feel uneasy. He was searching for any signs of animal carcasses, or worse yet, human bodies that may have been in or around the vehicle. But as he looked, he saw nothing. He even checked under the car, but again he didn't see anything. So John pulled out his phone to get in touch with the Sonora County Sheriff, who said he would send over a couple of guys to check the scene out over the next hour or so. But the sheriff also asked John to stick around so he could guide them in and show them exactly what the vehicle was. Now Yosemite is very big, so you could get lost there very easily. So given the fact that he had an hour or two to kill waiting for them, John went into the trunk of his truck, pulled out the little fire extinguisher stored there, and proceeded to put out the few small fires still burning in and around the vehicle. He was able to do this pretty effectively, but when he was done, he noticed that there was something smoldering in the trunk. Smoke kept seeping out of the cracks, and the more it did, the more John could smell that burning meat smell. And that's when it really hit him. Something or someone was in the trunk, and that's where the smell was coming from. Waiting for those sheriff deputies seemed like it took an eternity, mainly because when they got there, John knew they'd be able to open that trunk, and he really didn't want to see what was inside. So they get there, and John tells them what he suspects has happened and what he suspects is in the trunk. One of the guys uses a crowbar to wrench the trunk open, which was pretty easy considering the fire had warped the metal locks keeping it closed. But what they saw inside was something that John saw over and over again in his nightmares for many nights to come. It was a mess of black and burned flesh and contorted limbs. The sight of it alone caused John to gag and retch, puking up his breath onto the forest floor. Even the deputies who were there, they were hardened by years of witnessing violence and cruelty on a daily basis, had a hard time dealing with what they were seeing. One just leaned against a tree, mouth covered with a cloth rag. He kept on probably for this exact reason, while the others called into the corner to deal with the dead bodies. They told John he could make a move back to Yosemite whenever he was ready, and boy was he ready. He got out of there as soon as he was able to. From what John understands, the sheriff's deputy soon discovered that the two scorched bodies in the trunk of that burned out vehicle were those of Carol Sund and Salvina Pelso. The two women, along with Carol's young daughter, Julie, had been missing since the previous February, when they were last sighted alive and well at the Cedar Lodge near Yosemite National Park. It was actually one of John's colleagues over at the park that had been the last person to see them alive, and the whole thing had drawn national attention, landing them on the cover of People's Magazine when some journalists took an interest in the story. And it was a really interesting story, a very morbid one. Carol's wallet had been found on the street in downtown Modesto, California, 3 days after they had disappeared, and Julie's body was found dumped in a heavy underbush by an overlook at the Don Pedro Reservoir, several miles from the logging trail where the car had been found. Her throat had been slit from ear to ear. Local sheriffs and the FBI initially focused their investigation on a group of meth heads up in Northern California who had previous convictions for stalking and assaulting lone groups of women. But all those leads were abandoned when a break in the case casts light on another suspect. Because the story doesn't end here. In fact, it got even worse for all of us that worked up in Yosemite. One of the staff members of the Yosemite Institute was a young woman named Joy Armstrong. Joy was a nature lover who was passionate about her job as a ranger in Yosemite Village. She had made plans to visit friends in Solisto in July of 1999, but when she didn't return to the village as expected, her team members grew worried, and they contacted her friends who informed them that Joy had never arrived to spend the weekend with them. A group of rangers went to the cabin Joy stayed at, but found her white pickup truck still parked in the driveway, packed with luggage for a trip. The rangers began their search in the immediate area. Splitting up into small groups, they trudged through the dense brush looking for signs of their missing co-worker. After only a short while, one of the rangers spotted something metallic glinting in the sunlight. It was a key ring lying in a shallow ditch. This led them to another discovery, a dead body that was still unidentified because the killer had cut off the head. The body was wearing the same clothes that Joy had been wearing the day she had left for Solisto, but now they were filthy, dirt encrusted, and blood stained. Joy's murder was shocking and disturbing because it was a rare occurrence in the area. According to one of the older rangers, the last known murder to occur inside of Yosemite's boundaries happened 12 years earlier in 1987. In the months that followed, the police had almost no luck in finding a suspect. But in the immediate aftermath of Joy's killing, local authorities got lucky thanks to a witness statement given by one of Joy's co-workers. They had noticed a blue and white 1979 International Scout parked near Joy's cabin on the night of death. A few days later, two park rangers spotted the vehicle on the shoulder of the highway not too far away. The rangers searched around for it for a while until they came across a guy sunbathing completely naked at a nearby riverbank. The man identified himself as a handyman at the Cedar Lodge, which is located in the village, and that his name was Karis Stainer. The rangers immediately called the encounter into local cops, who showed up and compared the tire tracks left by the truck to those left at the scene of Joy's murder. They came back as exactly identical. A few days later, the same man was taken into custody while visiting a nudist resort in Sacramento. When interviewed regarding Joy's murder, he confessed. He also confessed to murdering Carol, son, and Savino Pelso, as well as Carol's daughter Julie. The FBI was called in for additional questioning in the case of the missing women. As they sat across from handyman Kerry Stainer, they began to realize the true horror of the situation. Stainer, with a calm and steady voice, revealed his dark past and the voices that had been tormenting him since childhood. For 5 months, he had been living among them, hiding in plain sight as a friendly and kooky local handyman, all the while secretly fantasizing about hurting women. The FBI agents were shocked as they listened to Stainer's confession. He had been living at Cedar Lodge, working as a handyman, and eyeing up potential victims under the pretense of being just another friendly local. No one had suspected him of having anything to do with the disappearances, as he seemed too nice and too much of a regular guy. The Stainer family name had been in the news before, but for a completely different reason. Many years before, when Stainer was just 11 years old, his younger brother, 7-year-old Stephen, had disappeared without a trace one afternoon while walking home from school on his own. This had devastated the family, causing a huge rift between Stainer and his dad. Eventually, Stephen had escaped captivity after 7 long years as the slave of Kenneth Parnell, a convicted child abuser and former employee of the Yosemite Lodge inside the national park. He had become a celebrity of sorts, with national newspaper and television coverage, as well as a book and a TV miniseries, chronicling his years of abuse. Whether or not the whole thing had shaped Stainer into the violent psychopath he eventually became was something that no one could properly determine. But shortly after, he began to claim he'd seen Bigfoot, the ape-man that's said to inhabit the woods of the Pacific Northwest. He was well on his way to being completely detached from reality. At his trial in 2002, Stainer pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. His lawyers asserted that the entire Stainer family had a history of abuse and mental illness. manifesting itself not only in the murders but also in the obsessive compulsive disorder, his obsession with cryptoids, specifically Bigfoot, and his request to be provided with obscene images in return for his eventful confession. Despite all of this, he was found sane and convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder by a jury on August 27, 2002. The court then had to decide if he would be executed for his crimes, which unanimously decided that he should, and rightfully so. Stano remains on death row as of September 2022, where problems with California death penalty laws are frustrating the process, and it's becoming increasingly unlikely that he will suffer the same fate as his many victims. The FBI agent who wrote this account of the event was deeply affected by this case and was considering writing a book about the whole thing and his experience living and working in the places where most of these crimes occurred. He hoped that by sharing the story, it would help keep others safe in a world where people are out there with the worst compulsions imaginable, driving them to kill. Thank you for everyone for listening to today's story. As always, I'm open to criticism and how I can make the channel better, and I'm also open to any story suggestions, so leave those in the comment box below. I really appreciate everyone that tunes in and subscribe. It's really helping the channel grow. So if you enjoy today's story and all my other stories, then please hit that subscribe button. Thanks.